Implications of business strategies. Corporate structure. Robust structure and resilient processes make a firm a hard target against financial crime. Robust means strong. Why do they make it difficult for you to become a target of financial crime? Because if you have proper policies in place, let's say every check should be signed by 2 persons. Every employee should be recruited and interviewed by multiple persons. Contracts must be approved by multiple departments. People know who to report to. People know who they are accountable to. And if anybody needs any information, there is complete transparency in the company. Reports are sent to the regulators on time and very clearly. If shareholders or the exchange or the markets or any of the stakeholders in the company requires more information, that can be obtained easily. There is good corporate governance in the company. There is good risk sponsorship by the board of directors. They lead by example. Employees are aware of their responsibilities. They are aware of the risk that the company is facing. And there is basically a strong risk culture. This is what we usually refer to as a corporate structure. So whether it's top-down from the board to the business unit or bottom-up from the business unit to the board, everybody knows where they stand. Everybody knows who they're accountable to, who they report to, and who their subordinates are. Companies with a good and strong risk culture, they thrive. They thrive. A company where the risk management team has a say, where the risk management team is independent, where the chief risk officer is heard, that is a company with proper corporate structure. Outsourcing and oversight. I mean, companies outsource all the time. And outsourcing is a way for you to reduce costs, not just financial costs, also reduce time costs. And you outsource a certain function to a third party, usually outsourced to third-party administrators, TPAs. They know that job. They've been doing it for quite a while. They're experienced. They know who to recruit. You can just, outsource it to them. But just because you outsource it to them doesn't mean that your responsibility has ended. Your risk has ended. No, that third party is also prone to financial risks, to crime. So you should keep an eye on them. Just because you've outsourced this function to them doesn't say, well, I don't care what happens. It's their problem now. No. It's still your problem. Yes, you've saved time and money, but it still falls under your business strategy. That certain function that you've outsourced, even though somebody else is doing it, but it's still your function. First, firms must control the threat of outsourcing partners being a target for financial crime. That's why companies ensure that when they outsource a certain function, they're outsourcing them to reputable, legitimate companies, not just to anybody. The use of middlemen, again, we use brokers, we use agents to do stuff on our behalf, to buy things, to sell things, to act on our behalf. And so we need to make sure that these brokers and agents and whoever is acting on our behalf are honest people and will not commit any fraud. Because remember, even if somebody is not formally attached to us, that means even if somebody haven't signed anything legal with us, if they are representing us in anything informally, we are still liable for their actions. Firms must be aware of the threat of middlemen being an instigator. That means the middleman being the cause or the target of financial crime. Firms must ensure middlemen comply with record-keeping requirements. Risk assessment. So first, let's define what is risk. Risk and uncertainty are very similar and very close to each other. Risk is a type of uncertainty. Are you 100% sure that fire is going to happen in this office? No, I'm uncertain. But fire cannot be considered as uncertainty. Why? Because fire can be assessed. There is a 1% chance of a fire happening, and if it happens, we will lose 100,000 dirhams. Now that you have quantified fire, you can no longer consider it as an uncertainty. You cannot consider it as risk. Why? Because you can manage it. But if I tell you, what do you consider an alien invasion from Mars? Is that a risk or is that an uncertainty? Well, obviously that is an uncertainty, because what are the chances? It's never happened before. We don't know how much we're going to lose. So there is no data. There's no way we can quantify it. An alien invasion is an uncertainty. It's no longer a risk. Specifically, so risk is a chance of something happening that will have an impact upon the objectives, something usually adverse. Specifically here, we consider financial crime risk. Identify gaps and opportunities for improvement. And this is usually the function of the risk management team. Make informed decisions, senior management. Develop risk mitigation means reduction. Risk mitigation strategies. So you look at every single risk that you face, let's say credit risk, and then you start saying, okay, fine, how do we reduce credit risk? We take collateral, for example, we diversify our portfolio, we obtain guarantees, we have some underwriting standards. How do we reduce market risk? We put stop losses, we put trading limits, we hedge, we only invest in liquid stocks. How do we reduce operational risk? We put controls in place, from preventative controls that reduce the likelihood of the risk to detective controls that reduce the impact of the risk. We have BCP, business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, and so forth. Ensure senior management, oversight, and involvement. Signing off on reports. Most of the reports that go to regulators these days must be signed off by senior management. Because I think at the time of Enron, one of the excuses of the CEO of Enron was like, I didn't know what's happening, it's the CFO, and it's the CFO who went to jail, actually. The CEO escaped to a certain island. He was a very good friend of George W. Bush. Enron happened in the year 2001. So he escaped to a certain island, and then we heard that the CEO is dead. And then they asked, okay, fine, let's show us the body. And then they said, oh no, we burned the body. And they said, okay, fine, show us the ashes. And then they said, oh no, we threw the ashes in the ocean. So yes, since then, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act came, and it ensured that management is involved in these decisions, and they signed off on them. Assist management in ensuring resources are aligned with risks. Again, we will see the word risk-based approach. Which means risks are provided with the necessary resources according to their priority and importance, according to their likelihood and impact on us. Risk assessment process. determine the inherent risk. Inherent risk is the risk before we consider any controls in place to reduce it. So let's say inherent risk, we have the risk of fire happening, and the chances of a fire happening are a 5% chance of happening, and if it happens, we stand to lose $50,000. This is before we have any policies and procedures and controls in place. But of course, we're not going to just sit around and do nothing. We are going to implement controls. So we are going to ban smoking. We are going to install sprinklers. We are going to install extinguishers in place. We are going to train employees, So all of these are controls. So after that, we have decided that once we've implemented these controls, then the chances of fire happening drops from 5% to 1%. And the possible losses drop from 50,000 to 10,000. This is what we call the residual risk. And this is what we should really care about, is the risk remaining after we've taken into considerations the controls in place. Sometimes this inherent risk is called gross risk, and this residual risk is called net risk. This is an easier way for you to remember them in case you're asked about them in the exam. And we compare it to the risk appetite. What is the risk appetite? The risk appetite is basically two things. It's what risks are we willing to take and how much are we willing to take. And based on it, because remember, all companies want to take risk because risk and return are positively correlated. You want more profits, you have to take more risks. So companies actively seek risk in order to generate a return. And that is called the risk appetite, how much risk we're willing to take. And that is calculated based on the residual risk, how much risk is remaining. And based on that, we will say, okay, fine, let's take more risk. Or this is enough risk for us, no need to take any more risk. This is the risk assessment process.